Okay, in the last video on verb phrases, we defined verb phrases. We talked about three of the characteristics. We talked about tense and how they can be tensed or non-tensed. We talked about aspect. Okay, and we talked about voice. And there's two more I want to do. The next one is mood. Whoop, get the right color here. And the next one is mood. Okay? And there are three moods in English. The indicative mood. Okay, now the indicative mood, a lot of times we won't even talk about it because 90% of the sentences we write, like all of the sentences we have written so far, have all been, let me check. Yes, all the examples we've given so far have been in the indicative mood. Okay? And it's how we state a fact or we ask a question about a fact, trying to get a fact. So Sheila, excuse me, goes to Sheila goes to school. Okay, we could also have a question, does Sheila go to school? Okay, and those are both in the indicative mood. We also have the imperative mood, which is for commands. Okay, so if I'm talking to Sheila, go to school. Go to school. Okay, and that's in the imperative mode. And in the imperative mode, normally, in the imperative mode, we use the base form of the verb. And it's kind of hard to tell because you say, well, we've got the you, all commands have an implied you as the subject, so you go to school. Isn't that the present? Okay, well, no, it happens to be the base form. And kind of the one where it really makes a difference is if you're telling somebody something like be quiet. Okay, you don't say are quiet, say you are quiet. You say be quiet. So be is the base form of that verb. Okay, and then finally you have the subjunctive. And people have a lot of trouble with the subjunctive, and it's mostly because you don't see it very often. Okay, subjunctive. And this is for non-factual statements. These are, they might be, they might not be, they could be, we might want them to be, things like that. But they're not a statement of things that are actually happening, or we're not looking for answers to factual subjects. Okay, they generally only show up in dependent clauses. Again, their uses are fairly limited, and in a lot of cases, you can get around. You can use an indicative clause instead, or the indicative mood instead, if you do it right. And so, kind of what 95% or more of what you write will be in the indicative mood. Maybe 4.5% is going to be in the imperative mood, and half or something less than half is going to be in the subjunctive mood. You're just not going to see it very often. But I will give you an example. I insist. Okay, now I'm going to have that Sheila go to school. Okay? So you can see in this verb phrase up here, in the indicative, Sheila goes. This happens to be the present. Okay? And so it is in the third person singular form. It's a tensed form. It's in the third person singular to match Sheila. Okay, in this, Sheila go to school. Okay, we're using the base form again, okay, to show that this is the subjunctive mood. So there's no ES on it. It's always go. Okay, now, again, in some cases, I insist that I go to school. We wouldn't be able to tell because I go to school and that I go to school are going to be written exactly the same, even though that one's in the indicative and that one is in the subjunctive. So we really don't notice it. So we have to be careful with third person singular is where it really shows up, and with the verb be, because the base form is different than the base form is different than most of the present tense forms. Okay, so I don't want to belabor that too much. We can talk more about that later. Do a whole video on that. And I want to get to the very important characteristic of modality. And there are many kinds of modality. Okay, so I will give you a few. And modality gives you many kinds of points of view of the author. Okay, and that's what modality is. It gives the point of view of the author. Okay, and I'm going to give a few examples. Like I said, there's a lot, and I'm going to give some common ones. And again, these have big words, but it turns out that they're really pretty simple concepts. So predictability. Oh, that's a nice big word. So what does it mean? Okay, let's go back to Sheila and her baking. Sheila will bake. Okay, I'm the author of this sentence, and I am predicting that Sheila will bake. Okay? Let's try another one. Ability. This is another common one. Okay, Sheila, again, can bake. She is able to bake. Okay? So, let's try one more. Desirability. Okay, and there's a lot of these. There's permission. There's a lot of different forms of modality. But desirability, Sheila should bake. Okay. So, and the normal way of showing modality is to provide either one of the 9 modal verbs, or to use some of the lexical verbs in certain constructions, like Sheila is going to bake. Okay, which is using the phrase is going to with the infinitive form as a direct object. But like I said, there's more than one way of doing that. And these are very modality is a characteristic that is comes in very handy. It allows us to make some very subtle statements in our verb phrases. So okay, so just a quick review of the characteristics. Okay, it can be tensed or non-tensed. Tensed means past or present, and number and person. So all 3 of those. And then aspect, progressive and perfect. Plus we can have one that's simple, which is none, and perfect progressive, which is both. Voice, is the subject doing the action or is the subject receiving the action? Mood, again, are we making a factual statement? Are we giving a command? Or are we making a non-factual statement? And then modality, which gives the author's point of view with respect to the verb phrase. So in this case, respect to the verb bake. Sheila will bake, she can bake, or she should bake. But also she must bake, she could bake. Again, there's a lot. She used to bake, she is going to bake. There's actually quite a few. So with that, I will stop here and come back and talk about syntax a little bit.